We move on with the program. We had the earlier one based on travel tech and travel smart. And the next one, the next panel discussion is platforms disrupting Asia as the subject material. Once again, I'll run through the synopsis with you before we bring the panel on. Product market fit will determine whether a software platform sustains or not. Scaling platforms locally and thereafter going global is the next biggest challenge. Securing a global footprint and the first steps to be taken in an international go-to-market strategy as a platform needs much discussion. The economic and social impact of the platform will correlate to the entrepreneur's vision for the product, and that will determine how global it will finally be. Ladies and gentlemen, on the theme, the lives of people are enhanced through technology enabling convenience and economic growth. I'd like to introduce to you our moderator and panel. The moderator has particularly said that he needs a bigger chair than the last moderator had, otherwise he's not going to handle the session, but we're going to squeeze him into the same chair nevertheless. Please welcome CEO of Tresync and former CEO of Slascom, Imran Furkan, who's going to moderate this for you. Along with him on the panel, co-founder, LenddoEFL, CEO, Courage Rocks, Richard Eldridge. And again, homegrown co-founder and CEO of IronOne Technologies, and a product that I myself find extremely useful, BoardPAC, Lakmini Wijesundera. Managing Director of Lalamove, Blake Larson. And ladies and gentlemen, the founder CEO of MiHCM, MiHCM Cloud, from Microimage Holdings, Harsha Purasinghe. Over to you, Imran. I hope that fits.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much. And my friends from the panel, some of them I've known for years, and I've just met Blake and Richard. Thank you for coming out here. I'm not going to do the introductions of each of these people because you could Google them, right? We've worked around the questions in a way that they will tell you their story in terms of the questions. Coming to the questions, you got the app. And please shoot us some questions through the app. And I'd like to not wait till the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through the questions as in breaks as we go along as well. I want to get started. Look, this is for the whole panel, right? We're looking to scale globally. And one of the things that I've looked at from all of your vision statements of all of your companies is that each of you have a compelling vision to help people solve a problem. It's not about being the localized version of something, right? How critical is this for you to succeed globally? Anyone can start. Huh?
Well, nobody wants to start, so I guess I will, yeah? So, I think a vision is important because it actually is the foundation of what your company stands for. And as a startup, you go through a lot of really crappy times, to be honest. Yeah? So a vision kind of is what enables you to create a culture, a set of values, kind of a guiding principles by which you can kind of refer to when things aren't going so well. It's very easy to get excited when things are going well, but the vision about what you're trying to do and the impact you're trying to make is the piece of the puzzle that often keeps you going, not when things are going well, but when things aren't going so well. So you might not actually get it perfect from day one either. I think your vision needs to evolve because you're going to learn a lot about yourself and your company and the people that work for you along the way. But it is the kind of the grounding thing that keeps you going forward when it's not always going so easy.
Richard?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Blake. It was the guiding principle of why I co-founded the last company I had, what kept me going through the good times, but more importantly, the bad times. I think the more we've hired millennials and Generation Z, they're looking for impact in the world. They want to know how they can make a difference. And I think being able to relate and have a common shared purpose is so important, both for attracting, motivating, and keeping great talent as well. So for us, it's something we spend a lot of time on. We go back to it every so often to make sure it's still aligned with what we did. And when we came out with ours, we put it to be something very, very big. We had sized the global market opportunity. We were very clear we wanted to become very focused to start with, but we decided to actually put a number of 1 billion in ours because it was something that after feedback we had got from some of the early team members, they wanted to touch and feel, and it to be such a stretch, it would motivate us to go big and fast.
And it has to be big enough that you keep going for years and years and years. Lakmini or Harsha, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so in my case, I would like to share a bit of a story. In 2013-14, I've been traveling extensively in the US, and I got exposed to a lot of things during that time, going to large companies, going to large tech events like Gartner events. Then I saw a huge digital disruption about to explode. So when I came back and when started working with our team, they were about to write the next version of our legacy human resource system, which powers most of the Sri Lankan companies. That's where we were, and few other regional markets. So I said, we have to stop this because there's a huge transformation that's going to happen in the future, which is happening right now, where the future of workplace is arriving. The whole employee experience, stakeholder experience is going to change. It's going to continuously evolve. And we need to create a platform for that future. And we are going to get enormous opportunity if we do it right to transform all these legacy human resource businesses to the future workplace, to enablement of future of work. So that's essentially we did. Our mission is to transform legacy human resources to digital. We have a lot of work to do. When we launched this MiHCM Cloud in 2017 with 0 customers, in 2 markets, as a pure play cloud product, it was a very scary time, but 2.5 years later, we are reaching almost 3 years to 2020. We are over 200 companies now, and in 16 markets. We have never been in 16 markets. We are in almost all the Southeast Asian countries today. It's sort of a hyper-localized digital HCM platform. So that's how it has been for us.
So as a local company, a company that has technology from Sri Lanka, I think global compelling vision is really important. Especially from a country such as Sri Lanka in Asia, because at this time, if we were in the US, for example, global compelling solutions, there's so many. But if you take Sri Lanka, Harsha's is definitely one of them getting there. So there's only a few, so we really have to, it does make an impact. So there is that element. And so our company, which is BoardPAC, we are definitely having that vision. In fact, the vision or the goal that we've set is to be the #1 platform, the most preferred platform for board management automation. It may sound a little aggressive, but it is that. And to be a top 100 global brand. So these are the 2 things that we work, and it's really helped us because whoever we speak with, and as Harsha mentioned, when we go overseas, we travel extensively, taking this message across. And through the years, I've seen that people start believing it, people start helping us. And originally, we called it even something called a seemingly impossible goal. But I really don't think it's seemingly impossible anymore. It's got a lot closer. Thanks.
Yeah. I just want to thank all of you for the questions. They've come very fast. I'm going to address some of them as we go along, so I'm going to do that. You add something else, Blake? No, okay. Just one question, in addition to that. How important is this vision when you're going really, really fast? How important is it to stick to it? Sometimes you want to be everything to everybody all the time. How do you come back to that? Anybody want to take a stab at that quickly?
Let me take this first, maybe. I think one of the hardest things to do as a leader of a fast-growing startup is to decide what you'll do, but probably the hardest thing is to decide what you won't do. And have those very hard conversations. It's very easy to say, I think we'll talk a little bit about localization later, but you run after things that you think will be the most important thing, a little bit of revenue here, a new client here. There's always an upside to it, but sticking yourself to a plan, which can be reviewed and changed over time, but saying no is probably the hardest thing that you'll have to do as new entrepreneurs.
I can add to that. So focus is key. When we built this, I made a very, very tough call. We will only do cloud, public cloud, pure play cloud. So whenever we go to various markets, various large customers, they want it on-premise. They keep insisting, otherwise they say you will lose the deal, you will be out of RFP. So we walk out. And we have lost deals by doing that, but we educate them and leave, saying that few years down the road, you're going to come back because you can't give a full digital experience and transform your workplace and the workforce to digital without embracing cloud. So it's very important you keep your focus and try to, without deviating here and there. Sometimes it put financial pressure, especially if you have a legacy customer base. They threaten to leave you. Sometimes we have to take that call and say, yes, maybe it's time for us, you all, to move on to some other platform if you are not willing to be part of our long-term journey that we are projecting to yourself.
Beautiful. The second question that I have for all members of your panel is about your product itself, your platform. Look, today, the front end, the one that is facing the customer, needs to be extremely user-friendly, right? It needs to make a connection with the consumer. It has to be personalized, to them, even if it's 1 billion people. And at the same time, the back end has to be, very enterprise grade. It has to be robust, scalable, able to handle, all sorts of difficulties. How have you guys worked on all of that? Because that's where I see a lot of people fail.
You can go.
So I guess that's again, being in Sri Lanka, we do have an edge because we have an extremely good talent pool. So that's in our backyard. So automatically, when we built our first versions or whatever, it just happened to be great. I'm not taking any credit for it. The talent pool is really good. So when we went out there to compete, we found our product to be a lot more robust. It's not, we cannot compare everything when we go out. And it just so happened. And then from there on, we realized our strength is the technology. Okay. Having said that, technology is not going to help us scale completely. It's just going to make sure that we get our ground footing and we don't lose our clients. But the rest of the game of the global compelling scale is the rest of it. So.
Blake, I know you were itching.
Yeah,
Go for it.
I kind of laughed because you spoke of like my nirvana. Yeah. But right now we're in 200 cities, 2 million drivers across 15 countries, 5,000 employees, and if your tech doesn't suck, you're actually not moving fast enough. So when you say scalable backend, beautiful UI, all of these, like if you're growing fast, you're learning things, so everything you've just built is already outdated. Yes, you can get better at the tech side, and having robust, configurable technology and all of this is wonderful. And what I would say is, like, if you're building too much of that too soon, like you're over-investing and you're trying to solve problems that you don't have yet. So solve the problem once you have it, and instead of trying to do it before you go to market or before you release the next version. Let the market tell you what's good and what's not good.
Interesting.
And so, like I said, for me, I laugh because it's like, man, we have so much crap legacy tech still that I would love to kill today. And that will never go away regardless of your stage. It was the same, 1 year in, it's the same thing, 6 years in. It's just a different problem at a different time, and you're always never tech should, most of the time, especially in an operations-heavy company like this, follow what the business needs. If the tech is too far out ahead, you're probably making huge risks because the market hasn't told you that yet. So for me, it's kind of, I laugh because it's something I aspire, wish, dream of, but know it probably will never exist.
Interesting, interesting. Let me just add something before others contribute. Say, the regulators in Australia, where I live, they want the big 4 banks, because they only have really 4 big banks, right, to have exactly what I described. But those banks have technologies. They have at least 50 different systems, right? And some of the tech was built in the 1970s, right? And they're desperately praying that those programmers who know that language don't die, right? And a core banking platform costs $3 billion, right? And no CEO is going to put that, because there goes their compensation package for the next year. So everybody is just plugging along as it goes. Your experiences, Richard, Harsha, on the platform?
So I kind of agree with him as well. I mean, like we have also built lots of sophisticated, cutting-edge stuff. But when you go to some of these markets, it's way ahead of time. I mean, people need much more simpler things. In certain markets, yes, they embrace it, especially in markets like Singapore. They love all these chatbots to those experiences. But then you have certain Southeast Asian markets like Myanmar and Cambodia. Actually, Myanmar is a very interesting market. They, of course, leapfrog. But then there are legacy markets, which are like Indonesia. They have sunk costs with large systems, and moving away from that to something completely digital, it's super hard because it's heavily customized, integrated. So they have to think through the transition. So there's an interesting thing that we are doing these days with one of the largest banks in the region. They have such a sunk enterprise solution, but they can't wait to deliver a digital employee experience. And they can't deliver with that vendor on that legacy platform. And they chose us, and we are doing an interesting integration to make it work. So you're right. I mean, it's very important when you build for something for the platform economy, it has the ability to customize, configure, localize, especially hyper-localize. If anyone out here wants to go to Asia, you need to think through localization. It's key, because what works here doesn't work for Thailand. And Thailand is a market a lot of people say, don't even think about going, you won't be able to do any business. Yes, that was right, but we are doing it right now because our platform was designed to localize to those conditions. So it's very, very key that you have that ability.
Okay, some very interesting questions, but okay, anybody else want to contribute? Good. So I'm going to quickly run through these questions. The problem is a lot of them will get answered in the ones that we have in place, so let me just run through them. But the next question I have is around taking your product global, right? And I want to start with Lakmini because there are quite a few questions for you. Right? Look, the buyer journey is evolving, right? They're going to compare you even before you've approached a customer. They're going to hear about you through social. They're going to compare you online, reach out to their network. By the time you get to them, they've kind of made up their mind to some extent. And I'm going to compare that with a question, add something that a couple of people have asked. Apart from technology, which you are very proud of, how experienced are Sri Lankan sales and marketing support talent pool in competing globally? So the question has 2 parts, really. How do you approach the new consumer? Do you think we have the talent pool to kind of take us there? I'll start with Lakmini, go to Harsha, and I'll get to the other two.
So I'll start with the first question, where, how do we approach customers? So ours is B2B, board meetings, board directors. I mean, they are not really the tech-savvy group. So it's quite a traditional sector that we are moving from literally paper or some very traditional technology onto us. So having said that, we went through a cycle. We tried inbound. We did a lot of Google ads, lots of money gone down the drain really. But what we finally found is for this market, I mean, just take it. Let's take a country like Malaysia, 3,000 companies, 60 million people odd. But we don't need that 60 million people. We just need the 3,000 companies, 5 people from a company, 15,000 people. So why waste all that money with everything? We just do outbound. Now we have calling people. Also, this is what I'm talking about, the direct sales. And we just reach out and make sure those companies know us. The other aspect, of course, as Harsha mentioned, for the global scaling, it has to be partnerships. So we are going gung-ho on the partnerships. So that means that, I mean, technology is from Sri Lanka, but it doesn't really have to be sold from Sri Lanka. And when selling, we have to make it localized, so we have local people. We hire local people as well as partners. So that's really our game. So
interesting.
It's a combination.
Interesting.
So there was another question, I forget that though.
Yeah, I think you've
That's
answered
fine.
both of them. Harsha first and then...
Yeah, so I mean, when we decided to take this global, I realized we are not going to go and sell this. It's not going to work. So we build a channel business. We wanted to, so we purely sell through partners. We have 25 partners now in the markets we operate, and some are tier 1 system integrators, and a couple of them are big, out of the big 4, you know. So they own the customer. So once we showed them a platform which can help their customers transition from a legacy to the digital journey, they are the ones who go out and sell. So what we essentially do is empowering the partners to do everything from selling, pre-selling, even implementation services, and even support. So initially, we were doing some direct selling in markets like Kuala Lumpur, but we stopped that also. Now we are purely a channel business. The second question about talent, when you are building a global company, I'm sorry to say that we can't build this alone with Sri Lankans. It's not going to work. At least it's not working for me. In certain markets, I have to hire local people. So we have hired some Vietnamese. We have Malaysians working for us now. We are going to soon hire some people in Burma, Thailand, Indonesia, and even Philippines. We are going to have headcount soon. And not only that, when you're, one of the other challenges I face coming from Sri Lanka is our people have not got exposed to startups which are hyperscaling or scaling exponentially. So we need to get talent, ideally from marketplaces like Hong Kong, Singapore, to the senior management team to scale fast. Because if you can find people here, but they don't have that mindset of scalability, you know. That is not there. It's just to build that and push them to do that, it's very, very hard.
Very good. Richard, Blake?
I think probably the biggest learning that I could share was you need to go and find out how your buyers are actually thinking about purchasing your product. Don't sit in a room together with your co-founding team and assume it. Far too many times you assume things are going to be what you think until you get out there and learn it. So I think probably from our side, we've always spent a lot of time and effort understanding the market to create not only the product market fit, but understand that buying behavior. On the consumer side, there's now technology that can track how they get influenced before they click a buy button. On the B2B side, there's definitely differences across different countries. And there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of networking and word of mouth that goes on. And you need to understand that and then develop appropriate marketing strategies in each country.
Blake, you're expanding, and you told me this now.
I mean, I think the only thing I would add is Casey talked about it earlier, Hong Kong. I mean, even when I moved to Hong Kong in 2013, there was 2 co-working spaces. Now there's a couple hundred, yeah? So it just talks about the transformation. So maybe Sri Lanka is in a similar situation. So I've kind of, and Hong Kong is a small market. It's 7.5 million people. So you could easily say, oh, Hong Kong can't go global. Sri Lanka can't go global. And the thing is, you don't have to do it alone, whether you use a partner strategy or whatever. There's very few global companies that take people from their country and go put them around the world anymore. To be global is to be local now, right? Like you see Chinese companies trying to take what they've done in China massively well and then go to other countries. You know, a lot of the bike sharing, for example. Even like companies like Huawei or something like this, like it's very, very hard to go with people from your own country. So I would never look at saying like we can't do it on our own. I don't think that's like even the right perspective to look at it. It's like, of course, to go global, you need to go local, and you build a company through the values of your company, and those come from the founders, and they come from a specific country. But it should never be a limiting factor to what you're capable of. Is the fact that you don't have the talent. That being said, where talent really helps, I would say, is that certain people have seen certain problems before, so it sometimes helps you go faster. Even us who are bigger right now, we're going like we just opened Brazil. And to be a truly global company, a lot of us on the management team haven't done that before. So we're looking to bring in people at our size that have just seen the problem before. And so it will help us go faster. So I'd say that would be my take on it.
Excellent. Yeah, go ahead.
So actually, something I missed mentioning is, so in our first round, before we went on a huge partner strategy, we started hiring people in different, I mean, even in the United States, New York. So my myth really was that if you go to New York, any salesperson who would come into your interview category would pretty much be a good seller. We have this thing that US people can sell a lot better than us. But
like
so this is a myth, right? I mean, I had it myself. So we lost a lot of money. But finally what we found is it's not really that. We just profiled wrong. Because when we were a startup company, competing with some existing players there, we actually hired very senior people. And those senior people actually had really done well when they were a lot younger and hungry. And by the time they came to us with all these credentials and huge money value, they were not hungry anymore. And they couldn't beg and plead with the larger companies. They had access to them. They went and met them. But they just didn't push hard. So we really learned that, and we've restructured our model. So
that's a very good observation, because I've been getting that. Yesterday I was in the office of a CEO of a Sri Lankan digital media company, saying the same thing. You know, they're going ahead, we're getting our people, but they're not closing the deal, and that's maybe because they're not hungry enough. That's great. I'm getting a lot of questions around AI, so let me just get that question before I get those questions off. Quite a few questions. How will AI impact the ecosystem? There's another one about legacy systems. What are the new actually expecting in terms of new challenges in 5 years with AI? Yeah. Just in general, I think there's a lot of curiosity around AI. Your general observations on how it will impact people and different industries. Anybody? Please.
So, again, coming back to my domain, which is board meetings and decision making in companies, we actually started conversations with some of the bigger players in the US. For AI, there's a lot of data requirement. So when we went out there, those companies are, they're talking about AI. They're having all these conferences. So when I actually dug deep into the AI groups and asked them, they're not ready. They have, they're far from ready to do something that is useful for us. So that's what I found so far, but we'll keep checking.
So the hype is ahead of the...
AI is a trend. I think, it's been brought about by having cheaper computing power, advanced analytics now available. And I think it's very different for different companies and different audiences. I think if you look at it from like you were saying, the large companies versus the SMBs around the world, you need data to train algorithms, for AI to then work. And if you don't have the data, you should probably be collecting the data, but you can't turn a switch on and become an AI company overnight. How it's affecting employees is another massive question that people are going to ask. And I think a lot of it is, there are going to be some jobs that are automated. I think but that's been a process that's been going on years. This is not new. How can AI assist humans do their jobs better? And what is that future of work? And how can now people potentially have more fulfilling jobs using the data that produces to actually make different decisions, and have great impact on the businesses they work for. So I think AI is definitely having it. Again, where's the puck going to go? I think everyone knows the puck is moving, and AI will be part of that. But I think it's not a one-size-fits-all right now.
Okay, I'm going to see whether there are any questions from the audience in addition to what's on the app. Anyone interested in? There should be some mics. I don't. So you need to get the attention of whoever is having the mic. Okay. Well, we'll continue with the app questions. Some of the questions here relate to profitability. And for profitability, obviously, it's also about what you're selling. And people buy perceived value. And that is very key, I think, in terms of getting the kind of customer you want, and then ultimately, making a profitable and a company that lasts. My question is to all of you, how do you create perceived value?
For our product, actually, this perceived value is country by country. So if we are mature in a country, the perceived value, market share, the whole thing, that's a given. But if we go into a new market, we have to play somewhat on the price initially to get the market share. So we are very aggressive on market share. We drop profit. And at a certain point when we are comfortable, we can get back on track. So that's kind of what we do.
Harsha, yeah.
So in our product, so we basically give a multi-stakeholder digital experience, taking traditional HR away from human resource to directly to the line, directly to the management, and to the employee. So it just enables the future workplace. So the value creation, again, it differs in certain markets, the markets that we operate. We have a standard price sheet, but we have to have differentiated pricing depending on the markets that we operate. The pricing that you have for markets like Singapore or Australia is not the kind of pricing that we have to set for markets like Bangladesh, Myanmar, Cambodia. So we do that by interesting discounting formula that we have worked out. We have a pricing guru sort of a person in the company who has really mastered this and come up with this. And we let the partners, especially the local partners, discount and educate us on the pricing. Because you can have fantastic technology which solves lots of problems for the company and take company to the future, which reduces cost for them, improve efficiency, does so much things. But how much you can pay for that differs based on the market. So it's a very, very important thing that you set the market. I think for all these players, it's okay. How much you charge from the drivers, it's not the same, right, in the different geographies.
Okay, Blake, Richard?
I mean, so your question is specifically how do you create perceived value? Yeah,
so that they'll pay the price you want?
Well, I mean, generally you take a task off of somebody that, now they're willing to pay somebody instead of spending their own time doing that task, right? And you can do it either because their time is worth a certain amount of money, that's better, they get a better ROI selling instead of doing something operationally. For us, it's quite interesting because we have two customers, which is our drivers and the small businesses. So how you create perceived value is quite different. Drivers in our industry, if they were doing 3 deliveries a day and you can bring them 6 deliveries a day, now there's quite a bit of perceived value, so they're willing to pay you for that increased efficiency. Same for our customers. If you're a florist or a small restaurant, you probably love cooking food or making beautiful bouquets. You probably don't love buying a motorcycle, managing a driver and making sure he comes in on time and gives good customer service. So the perceived value is letting you focus on what you're excellent at and we'll be your partner. So yeah, it's basically making the people's lives a little bit easier than it was before.
I think the important thing is to understand the pain point of the customer. And then from that, understand what can you give and what value do you give to him, and then price it. And I think the important thing there is not to look at it, this is the minimum price I can sell my product to, but actually opposite, how could I potentially increase my price because I'm giving more value than you think. An example of that was in the early days when we were giving credit out to people. We were focusing on people that had $200 in income and focused on that market. And we had people who came to us that were earning $2,000 looking for credit. And our pricing was not competitive at that point because it wasn't our market and we hadn't even thought about it. And we were like, well, why are they coming to us? And it would be very easy for us to drop our price, but what we found was it was the speed and convenience of what we were giving them. They were prepared to pay that extra money because if they'd gone to a bank, it would have taken them a month to get money that they wanted in 3 days. So it's kind of an interesting anecdote that it doesn't always mean as soon as I found that value, I drop my price. There are opportunities if you do it right to increase price to find those niches.
Can I make one more point on that I think is pretty important is your customers don't care what it costs you to produce the product or service. So when you think of your pricing, they don't care. It's actually the value you create for them that they're willing to pay for, not what you spent to get there. So I think it's very easy to forget that sometimes.
Exactly. And I just want to add one more anecdote that I have. Say, Sachinta, who is the program head of ICT, and he's going to kill me for saying this, but that's fine. When I talk to him, he comes over with various delegations. He said, I say, what do I tell Sri Lankan startups and others when I meet them? What do you want me to tell them? The message. And one thing that he keeps consistently telling me is, please tell them that when you price, don't. Particularly when you price in competitive markets, where they have alternatives, please tell them that you don't price in a way. The singular saying is much better, but I'm not going to use it. Don't think that you can milk them, right? As much as you can, particularly with one customer. Right? It's about this whole perceived value because they see through it. They see through it very easily because, prices can be compared and they've already done that before they've come to you. So I think that's something that particularly local startups don't understand. When they get an opportunity, they want to make their lifestyle, the whole their entire lives, whatever they want in one go by pricing wrong. And that's a serious challenge that I've seen, particularly for some of our local companies. What I want to also do is I want to do justice to all the questions. There are a lot of questions for this panel. I think it's very interesting ones. I'm going to run through them very, very fast. And I want yes/no answers by some of you because I just simply can't take all these questions. There's a lot of questions for this panel. I like this one, so I'm going to do it very quickly. Do you think being incorporated in Sri Lanka is a strength or weakness? Harsha, Lakmini, quickly. Being incorporated in Sri Lanka as opposed to being incorporated in Singapore or somewhere else? Positive, negative?
Well, positive is we are in Asia, close by to a huge market.
Okay. In terms of payments, in terms of other regulatory issues?
So, of course, in our case, we have our regional office is in Kuala Lumpur, but we are planning to set up in Singapore as well. You want short answers, so I'll stay there, but I can give detailed explanations later.
Yeah, we'll be around, so please, you can ask them. Next one. Okay, we did pricing. Harsha, again for you, you're a very popular guy. How do you compete with global giants who have similar products?
So the thing is, we are not building this for the competition. We don't compete with the...
Beautiful.
We are looking at differently. We see a huge problem out there, and our market is not Sri Lanka anymore. Sri Lanka is, of course, we are having our legacy existing customers. If we can just upgrade those customers to our digital platform, that's more than enough for us, because the market out there is huge. And we have enormous potential to get. So actually, I even don't spend time here anymore. Excellent. Most of my time is spent in Southeast Asia.
Excellent. How does the decision-making continue with the selection of technology, go-to-market strategy, and as you scale? Blake, Richard, how has your decision-making strategies changed? Have you decentralized more, empowered people more? How has it changed, or is it centralized? As you scale, how has your decision-making changed? That's the question.
As we've expanded to other countries, you've got to give people in those countries the ability to make decisions. You can't try and hold it all close to you. You know, when you started, there was 2 of us across a room from each other and we made the decisions. Today, I don't know what decisions people make. I've hired them. I trust them. They understand clearly the vision of where we want to get to. They understand the values of how we operate, and they have some guidelines in terms of our priorities. Go and do it. Have fun. Go. Trust them to go and make the right decisions.
I mean, the only thing I would add that's perfectly said is that what we do is we give them constraints, right? So we say, this is your budget, this is the goal. I'm not going to tell you how to do it because that's what I hired you for. So I think one thing to do is be very clear what the constraints are.
Trust them, yeah.
And the more responsibility the person has in the role, you make the box a little bit bigger. But yeah.
Good. I'm going to come back to you, Blake, because we had this chat in the speakers lounge. How do you keep going when a platform is not moving much in the initial part of how do you go through the tough times, basically?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, so we almost ran out of money twice between our Series A and Series B, right? So at that point we had 200, 300 employees that we were feeding every night and et cetera. So there's a lot of really difficult moments when you decide to build a business, whether it's tech business or restaurant business. Don't forget that like the guy across the street who opened a retail store is an entrepreneur too. It's not easy work for anybody. And I think the thing that I've learned over time is there's not that many decisions that will kill your business. So like, yes, they're important, but like keep looking forward if your vision is solid. And then the second part is if you can actually find as much value in the terrible moments, the time the employee that you could never afford to lose quits because something happens and he has to go get a corporate job, the time that the 50th investor in a row told you no, that there's no market for you, and then you think you're never going to get money. So if you can learn to value those as well as much as the ones where you're on top of the world because you just closed the biggest client, like then it makes the journey worth it because you've learned something through it. And no matter what, you can say that you gave your best effort, and you're going to be like the world keeps going and you will keep going regardless of the outcome of your company. So you need to be able to find value in every good moment as well as every tough moment. And so I think this for me, I mean, you got to be a little crazy to start a company, by the way. You know, you just got to be just a little bit off your rocker to want to do what we do. And so, like, it can be a lonely road, and just remember you're all right. You're doing okay, and you're going to make it till tomorrow.
Beautiful.
I can just add something to that. I mean, when I started, when I actually launched MiHCM, I never expected this journey because I literally do over 150,000 air miles now. I just came from Manila after 2 weeks. Lots of hotels, a lot of missing family. Luckily, I have a supporting wife and kids. Thanks to that, I'm surviving. It's not easy. And you can't do this business by Googling and finding partners and doing. No, you cannot. You have to literally travel to all these countries, meet people, understanding those cultures, cultural sensitivities, learn how to work, do business with those partners, customers. It's not easy. It's a lot of emotional, physical toll. So, but it's fulfilling at the end of the day when you see progress, when you see you help transform the future. It's quite fulfilling.
Okay. We're down to 5 minutes. I'm going to do with 2 questions I've had in mind. One is very important. One, you guys have spoken about it in terms of, you touched on it, but I want a little bit more specifics. Localization, specific examples of what you've done, because that's I think critical for scaling globally. And I want you to think of the last questions because I want you to give some time, which I will ask you last, is about what surprised you. One thing, that's the last question I have for you. 4.5 minutes. Localization, examples of what you did. Yes, please, Lakmini.
So we work now, actually the count is 56 countries. We don't really preempt and build, like as Blake mentioned, we don't build it early. So we kind of go to a market, the market tells us what they want. There's been very little localization. Okay. For our business, because it's B2B, it's mostly English. There are some countries with languages, but you don't really, Malaysia, or most of Asia is mostly English.
Yeah, and also India. The British legal system.
And Unicode is there. They can put their content in Unicode. I mean, and lots of PDFs have their own languages. So we really didn't have to do a huge amount of localization. We do, but it's not a major thing.
Let me flip that question. Did you get into the product because it required less localization? Or did you get into it because you wanted to? Board automation, something very close to my heart. And then you realize, oh, it's so easy because there isn't that much localization.
No, there was no predetermination. We just wanted to build products that were global. That was my thing. So we kept on looking. This is not the first product. There are some other products. They're doing fairly well in various stages, but this really took off. So it's not predetermined. It just happened. In fact, my business partner asked me, why are you doing this? Like, aren't there like 100 million EDMs, document management systems? So I said, I don't know. I mean, it's working. People are buying it. Let's go on it. So that's what it is. Even today, it's like that.
Richard, Blake, yeah? Localization.
Yeah, I mean,
many examples.
Just one quick suggestion on this. I would just remember the 80-20 rule. Yeah, your core product, it's going to service 80% of the customers in most new markets. If that's not the case, if it's only 20%, then you don't have a globally scalable market. You have a very local market. So just remember 80-20 rule. Eventually, you'll run into some blockers. Southeast Asia, for example, is 90% cash.
Of course.
We went to Brazil, it's 90% credit card. So we have to then put in credit card into our payment system. But our core value proposition is moving things at point A to B more efficiently, and that didn't change across markets. So just 80-20 if you have a global scalable product.
Harsha?
So in our case, since we went to Southeast Asia, we have to localize the product, but we designed the platform to enable that capability. So we have localized to the respective languages and the legislatives. And therefore, we now have a platform where if you are headquartered in the region, you can run a single instance where your local officers, when their employees log in, they will get a very localized experience, aligned to the local statutory requirements of that country. Not only we localize the core HCM side of things, we even localize payrolls, working with some of the consulting partners as well as hired consultants. So we have payroll supports for now almost all the ASEAN countries. We are enabling Vietnam. Once that is done, we pretty much one of the platforms which covers almost all the Southeast Asian countries. So localization play a role. But I agree, when we went to a market like Australia, we didn't want to touch the payroll because it's very complex and there are enough players. So rather than we get into that space, we decided to do some integrations to existing platforms.
Okay, good. Richard, anything in localization that you've done?
I mean, we have to do a lot of localization for both regulatory as well as market conditions. I'd say, one of the things sometimes people forget about is different people or different market segments, even within the same country, need localization. So we've seen it, for example, some of the work we do with farmers, where the literary skills are a lot less. We do psychometric testing, and the images and the words we have to use, even in the same language, have to be very different. So we'll only address those if we think the market is big enough, like Blake was saying. Otherwise, it's not worth it. But you don't just think it has to be because of another country. It can be within your country, but only look at localization if you think that niche market is big enough to scale. Otherwise, it goes back to focus.
Okay. Good. One final question to all of you. Thank you for all your questions on the panel. I've read all of them. There are some which will be answered in other panels. I'm not going to touch them. We try to cover as much as we can, in the general questions as well. One final question to all of you. When you undertook this journey, right, of going global, what one thing surprised you the most? Something that you didn't think about when you started off, and you're still shaking your head saying, hey, that was, that was very surprising.
So, going international versus going global is different. The definition going global means every country, literally. So, when we set out to that, we even tagged it as a seemingly impossible task. We're going to do it. But surprisingly, it's very real now. It can be done. And if I take myself back, it would be a surprise that it was easier than what we thought.
Others? Hard question. I know, and that's why it's last.
That I could still be as excited today as I was my first day. Yeah, because the challenges are just different, but like if you're doing what you're meant to be doing and you find passion in your mission, then I didn't think I would have the endurance, the energy to, keep going this long, and I think it's been such a pleasant surprise.
So it's quite a hard question because I can't give one thing, but one biggest thing I realize now, I never imagined that I'm going to miss my family so much, which is really painful for me. It's not easy to. Now I just saw my kids and my wife after 2 weeks. Again, I'm flying out tomorrow night. I just specifically came for this because I have some important schedules next week. So we probably have to even change location just because to facilitate this business scaling. So this is something that we never planned or expected. So I'm now talking to my wife. Shall we move to Singapore or Kuala Lumpur? Because no choice. It's very hard because if you're based there, it's so easy to travel to the regional countries. Some are just one-day trips. Go in the morning to Jakarta, come in the afternoon.
True.
So, but when you're doing it from Sri Lanka, it's quite hard.
Richard?
Actually, it's the opposite of localization. I think there's a lot to be said for local languages, cultures, but we do a psychometric test, and we found that a young person who's 23 years old, who's just graduated college in Mexico, behaves almost exactly the same as that 23-year-old whether it's Sri Lanka, India, anywhere in Southeast Asia. And he behaves much more closely in any one of those countries than one generation before him.
Wow.
And that's really interesting to think about when you think about localization in the future.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be around. Go out there, conquer the world, just like these people.